Hey, what's up everyone? Cardboard.Capitan here, and today I want to share this newest iteration of the Deserts deck, with Foundations being released roughly 1 week ago. There is a version I've been experimenting with, and it comes down to this card Genesis Wave. What it does, you can pay X, and it'll let you reveal X cards from the top of your library. You may put any number of permanent cards with mana value X or less from among them onto the battlefield. And then all cards revealed this way that weren't put into the battlefield put into your graveyard. So those permanents include lands. Deserts is notorious for having a lot of ping lands, so Heath, for example, Gulch, whenever they come into play, they deal 1 damage to the opponent. Couple that with some Desert Synergy cards like Outcaster Greenblade, Sandcloud Harbinger, as well as cards with landfall such as Freestrider Lookout, Iridescent Vinelasher, and you have a good framework for a deck. Now, in addition to those Desert Synergy cards, you have some mana acceleration through Case of the Locked Hothouse, which will let you play an additional land each turn, as well as once you have 7 lands in play, you can start playing cards from the top of your library, and that's basically anything but the instants and sorceries in this deck. You have some control elements. Desert Stew, which is a -X/-X type card, which is great against, for example, Hearthfire Hero, or cards that could gain Indestructible. But you need to have a decent number of deserts to take out the larger creatures. Also, Shoot the Sheriff. And I decided to put this in because I've been seeing Teysa, the one that comes in and out of play and produces tokens, so that's more of a meta consideration for me. But I think 8 bits of removal is a good number. Starfall Invocation. Right now, that's my Wrath effect of choice. It has some synergy because there's a large number of creatures with Enter the Battlefield effects. There's Greenblade and Harbinger. But I could see this getting replaced with Day of Judgment down the line. As far as win cons, typically, you're going to chip away at the opponent with ping lands and early Iridescent Vinelashers. If you can get a Greenblade to swing through, even better. A lot of the times, the Greenblade's just going to be a big wall that your opponent can't get past. Usually you win off the back of a large Genesis Wave, so what'll happen is you cast your Genesis Wave, you get a whole lot of Vinelashers, possibly some Lookouts, and then a whole bunch of lands, and the triggers stack up there, and hopefully that's enough for lethal. I do have some other versions that I'll cover, but this Asban White Green Black version is a version I've been playing the most. The other versions are kind of experimental. I don't know if they're good or not, but it's something to explore. It's only about a week left of the season. I'm trying to get a high rank, so. As far as sideboard Biza, that's for aggro. I've been seeing Mice. Mice have been just really strong right now, so the life gain helps here. Cease Desist, Reclamation Sage. That's your enchantment removal. Cease and Desist also has the option of removing cards from the graveyard. Now, I'm not seeing too much Reanimator. The Desist is more for the Dollmaker decks that clone their enchantments. Thoughtstocker Warlock. That's some targeted hand hate that has some synergy with the ping lands. The only thing I don't like is it's 3, but it's a creature and it can target more than non-creature spells like Duress, right? Finally, Painful Quandary. Now that's a card I wanted to try versus Heist. I don't know if it's any good or not, but the theory is that Heist, it tends to play out a lot of cards in their hand, and start playing cards from the heisted cards they have, or the virtual hand. So I haven't fought any heist decks since I put it in. I did fight some control decks, and it did see some success versus them. So I'm keeping it in there for now. Um, so that's the Asman version. I did start tracking the win-loss record, but I guess the tracker version, the tracker program I'm running, it's updating right now. I'm on Linux, if you can't tell, so I'm using MTGA tool. So I'll have to post that as a later at a later date. So maybe I'll try like a YouTube post, right? Okay. Sultai Desert Wave. The only things I changed here are really Nashi, Mockingbird. Now Mockingbird was a card I played a lot in about 2 months ago in the Sultai version of Desert Sword. I'm keeping it here. Now the thing is, if you Genesis Wave a Mockingbird, um, then you can't pay the X of the Mockingbird, so it's going to be copying Vine Lashers. Could be good, could be bad, but even on its own, I think Vine Lasher has a not Vine Lasher. Mockingbird has the live value, being able to copy a green blade, getting another land, and having a flying green blade. Um, Possibly also copying Nashi if you need to get another um, card from the graveyard. Same sideboard. Soul Guide Lantern, I guess that's filler right now. Feel free to change that to something else. But I haven't played too many games with this. So, again, this is an experimental deck. Finally, I want to finish off with Jund. Now, this is the most experimental deck. Absolutely no sideboard. And the reason I'm kind of hesitant about this is because it has a large number of creatures. Now, with red, red has a large amount of landfall. So, for example, you have the Vine Lasher. You also have Spitfire Lagik, Lagak. I don't know. Anyway, whenever a land you control enters, this creature deals 1 damage to each opponent. So basically, it's a non-targeted version of Vine Lasher. That's a bit more expensive. I also have Valley Flamecaller. I could see Roaming Throne also being an option because I believe that would double up the triggers of the lizards. But Valley Flamecaller, just to add 1 more damage to the landfall effects of Vine Lasher and Lagak. Nothing else new. Just be mindful of the lands too. Alright. That covers the 3 versions I've prepared so far. Let's go to some gameplay. So a little story about my opponent. When I was looking for decks to play in Alchemy about 2 months ago, this person's deck popped up, and this is I credit as the original player of the Desert's archetype in Alchemy, so I think it's pretty cool that I'm able to play against the creator with how I feel the deck evolved in the past 2 months or so, and hopefully I can take them down and maybe inspire them to go back to the archetype. As far as what the opponent's playing, as far as I can tell, it's black and white tokens, so Caretaker's Talent, Doll Maker, 3 Blind Mice, stuff like that. So here you have the Doll Maker and the Talent combo, and the opponent can continuously duplicate the talent to draw cards. I lead off with a Harbinger, and since I have Lockhouse and Freestrider Lookout, solid combination to start getting lands out. to power out that Genesis Wave in hand. I also have Deadly Cover Up should the board get too flooded. But I also have to keep in mind that Dollmaker has an activated ability which can save tokens. So Overlord on the Miss Moors pay its impending cost. I do have the Lookout to guard against those tokens. And I have another case of the Locked Hothouse and 2 deserts. So I'm getting 3 lands out this turn. I already have the 3 green needed for Genesis Wave, and I draw another Genesis Wave. And I do have Virtue of Persistence, so I just use that to take out the Dollmaker should I want to Deadly Cover Up. Can't really attack. I want to keep the Harbinger and the Lookout alive as long as I can, because I feel my way of winning is just Genesis Wave for a whole lot of mana. Lookout goes by. Opponent drops another Dollmaker. I feel like I could survive a few turns here, so Deadly Cover Up isn't too necessary for next turn. Also, I'll take that back. Because the opponent is tapped out, I do want to Deadly Cover Up here. And then I bring out the Harbinger, and then I can play a Desert to get the bonus effect. So I'm just trying to maximize the amount of mana I can pay for Harbinger, or not Harbinger, Genesis Wave. Surprised the opponent didn't play the Mistmoors for 2 or for 6, but they do keep 1 3 mana untapped. So here mainly I'm just setting up to do a whole lot of direct damage. Feel that Locked Hothouse has done what's needed to do. And then Genesis Wave for 5. So when you're Genesis Waving, you generally want to cast it for at least 4, because that's going to start hitting the Locked Hothouses in your library. I try to go for 5. I think that's a good number to go for. But a lot of your spells are 3 and below, so yeah, opponent just gives up. So as far as the sideboard goes, Reclamation Sage. I'm not too sure about Cover Up though, because Cover Up, it can work if there are no Dollmakers to save the tokens, but I keep 2 just in case. The Sages have more value in this matchup because those take out the Overlords, as well as the 3 Blind Mice, possibly, which I didn't see the first round, and the Talents before they get Dollmakered. In later versions of this deck, I added Cease and Desist because those destroy all enchantments. This hand I keep. It's pretty decent. I can Vine Lasher turn 2, Green Blade turn 3, and Harbinger on turn 4. Yeah, I want to keep that Desert Stew. I could have Vine Lashered there, but I guess I decided not to, which is kind of good because the opponent had a virtue, the white virtue anyway. And so, I'm a little bit low on colored mana. I want to get white for the Harbinger, and then another black should I need to cast the cover up. Opponent's desperate to get rid of my green blade. Alright, and I draw a lookout, which is great because I have the desert to do damage, and I can start building up my mana base now. I've got 2 green sources, one away from Genesis Wave. And then the opponent drops the Mothlight Processioner. Now, what I'm going to do, I don't want to remove the Processioner on my turn, because I'm going to deal damage with the Vine Lasher, and that counts as committing a crime. So that's going to trigger the Lookout. I get another land. I'm going to go with Mirage Mesa, because I already know that I want to trigger the Lookout next turn. And so setting up my draw through Surveil wouldn't have a purpose. So upkeep step, get rid of the Processioner, crime committed. Festering Gulch, well, I already have my green mana, but I'm pretty much set mana-wise for color. Spellmaker on the Overlord. Okay. And so I can wave for 5. Color doesn't matter again, I'm pretty sad right now. I'm getting a few Vine Lasher triggers. And I also in Reclamation Sage some. I probably should have Reclamation Saged the Overlord token, because the Dollmaker's giving the tokens indestructible is 1 white, 1 colorless. So a little bit of a mistake on my part, but I don't see it as too big of a deal. Figure next turn, unless the opponent can wipe the board, they're taking a Genesis Wave for lethal. So nowhere to run. On the lookout. Portent on a Vine Lasher token. Okay, here I am counting mana. Genesis Wave for 8. And I think even if if both Vine Lashers were removed, that would be lethal. Because I drew 4 desert lands, and then I can get another desert from Lookout. So, that's the power of this deck. The clean 2-0. Okay, finally I want to end with a few gameplay tips to improve your strategy with this deck. Number 1... Oh. Let me turn off the volume first. Temporarily, at least. You want to go to gameplay, and you want to turn off auto-ordered triggered abilities. This is set to true by default. Now, the reason you do this is there are times when you want certain triggered abilities to happen first. For example, if you have a Sandstorm Harbinger in play and you play a Conduit Pylons, there's two triggers that happen. There's a card draw from the Harbinger, and there's a Surveil from the Pylons. So you want to put the Pylons on the top of the stack, do your Surveil, have a little choice in what card you draw, and then have the card draw from the Harbinger. And there's other situations like with a shuffle from the Green Blade and so on. But you'll find those as you play the deck. Number 2, you want to be aware of your mana curve. Generally, what I go for a black source on turn 1 that opens up Vine Lasher on turn 1 if it's untapped, turn 2 if it's enters into battlefield tapped. And you want to have a green or white source by turn... Well, this is the wrong one. This will die. You want a green or white source by turn 2 because that opens up Green Blade on turn 3. That's probably the best choice. Harbinger on turn 3. Free Strider Lookout, I see it more as a turn 4 play because you can play your ping land after you play it and get that guaranteed crime trigger. Now, Harbinger, it has an enter the battlefield trigger, so if you were to play it on turn 3, then the opponent can respond to that trigger, and while you do get that shuffle the Sunscorched Desert into both players' top 10 cards, you cannot play another land for the turn, so it might end up hurting you in the process. Okay? Step 3, let me talk about sideboarding real quick. Now, even though you've seen some pretty hefty Genesis Wave plays, just be aware that it's a very high mana cost card. This is my sideboard right now. Just try and figure out where your opponent's trying to win. So, for example, aggro, I'll take out the Genesis Waves. I have a good amount of removal. So, I've got Biza, for example, so I'll bring those in. And I'll talk more about... Well, I've already talked more about the sideboard in the individual versions of each deck. Finally, last tip, manually tap your lands, especially the colorless ones, like your Pylons and your Sunscorched Deserts, because what Auto Tapper likes to do, it likes to tap those Pylons to filter land, to filter colors, and that will ruin your plays sometimes. So manually tap your colorless lands first, and then tap your colorless, and then play your spell. So, alright. I think I've said enough about this deck, this archetype for now. So with that said, that's my contact info. Find me on X under user Cardboard.Capitan, Moxfield Cardboard.Capitan, where you can find the latest version of the 3 decks I just posted up. Alright, see you... Oh. Like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget the YouTube thing, right? Alright, now, I'll see you later. Bye.